The first time I met her, she was fumbling at the convenience store entrance, unable to even figure out the mobile payment on her phone. She looked at me with this pitiful, helpless expression. My heart softened, so I paid for her stuff and spent 10 minutes showing her how to use the app. After that, she was always getting lost, always tripping, and always looking at me with those wide, misty eyes. My protective instincts went into overdrive. I honestly thought this girl wouldn't survive a day without me. And somehow, in all that confusion, we ended up at the courthouse getting our marriage license. On moving day, I found a box tucked under her bed. Inside, neatly organized, were books like The Art of War for Dating and How to Make a Man Devote His Life to You. The newest one was lying open, with a line highlighted in red. Final step. Make him be the one to propose. My hand shook slightly as I held the book. The sound of the shower stopped, and she walked out wrapped in a towel, her hair dripping wet as she tilted her head to look at me. Hey, babe, did you find my little box? She smiled, looking as innocent as the day we met. Back at the convenience store that first night, a girl was blocking the way. Her back was to me, her head down, holding her phone out as if she were paralyzed. I was in a rush to grab a pack of cigarettes and couldn't get around her, so I let out a frustrated sigh. She turned around. Her face was pale and clean, her eyes huge, looking a bit dazed. Her voice was barely a whisper. How do you use this? She turned her phone screen toward me. It was the payment QR code screen. I looked at her, and she looked at me. The air went still for 3 seconds. You scan it against that machine, I said, pointing to the terminal next to the register. Oh, she turned back, leaning over, bringing the phone toward the scanner with the slow, deliberate care of someone defusing a bomb. Nothing happened. She moved it closer, practically pressing it against the glass. Still nothing. The cashier, a young girl, was turning red, trying to hold back a laugh. I took a deep breath, walked over, and took the phone from her hand. My fingertips brushed the back of her hand. She was cold. Her fingers twitched. I held the phone over the scanner. Beep. The successful payment chime echoed. There you go, I said, shoving the phone back in her hand. She took it, looked at the screen, then at me, blinking. Thank you. Thank you so much. No problem. I stepped past her to go into the store. Wait, She spoke up again. I stopped and looked back. She held up her plastic bag. 2 cartons of milk and a loaf of bread. This is for you. Why are you giving it to me? To say thank you for helping. She pushed it forward, looking determined. I'm Mia Somers. Caleb Stone. I didn't take the bag. Don't worry about it. Her hand stayed in midair, looking awkward. The tips of her ears slowly turned red. It was annoying. I reached out and took the bag. Fine. Thanks. With that, I walked into the store, grabbed my cigarettes, and paid. When I came out, she was still standing by the door. The street lamp stretched her shadow into a long, thin line. Why are you still here? I asked. She seemed startled, her shoulders jumping. I forgot how to get back. I looked at her. She gave me the name of an apartment complex not far from here, just 2 blocks away, but the area was a maze of side streets. Left at the light, go through the intersection, take the first alley on the right, and then right again at the end, I said. She listened intently, nodding, then looked up at me with those foggy eyes. Left, light, right, alley. Forget it, I interrupted. I'll take you. Her eyes lit up for a second before she quickly looked down. Is it too much trouble? Yes, I said. Let's go. She followed behind me, her footsteps light. If I walked fast, she walked fast. If I slowed down, she slowed down. She kept a steady 2-pace distance. The night air was a bit chilly. She pulled her collar up around her neck. Cold. I didn't turn around. No, she said, her voice drifting in the wind. I didn't say anything else. When we reached the entrance of her complex, I stopped. We're here. She looked inside the gates, then back at me. Thank you, Caleb. Yeah, I'm going in now. She turned and walked toward the building. After a few steps, she turned back and waved. I gave a small wave back. She smiled and ran inside. I stood there for a moment, pulled out a cigarette, and lit it. The smoke dissipated in the breeze. My phone vibrated. A friend request. The note said, "It's Mia Somers. For the milk money." I stared at the profile picture. A cartoon rabbit, looking incredibly stupid. I hit accept. A message popped up immediately. Did you make it home? Not yet. Get home safe. I didn't reply. I shoved the phone back into my pocket and walked toward my place. The bag with the milk and bread felt heavy in my hand. The next day, Caleb, my wife, is not connecting. She sent a voice note, her voice raspy from just waking up and sounding a little panicked. I kept my eyes closed and sent back a question mark. She sent a screenshot. The Wi-Fi list was completely blank. It's gone, she said. Is the router plugged in? I typed. A long while later, she replied, What's a router? I stared at those 3 words for 10 seconds. I sat up, ran a hand through my hair, and called her. It rang 3 or 4 times before she picked up. Hello. Her voice was small, and she was out of breath, as if she'd just run to the phone. You home? I asked. Yeah. Wait there. I hung up, threw on some clothes, and headed out. I grabbed some breakfast on the way and picked up an extra serving for her. When she opened the door, she was wearing fuzzy pajamas, her hair in a messy bun, and her eyes were a bit puffy. What are you doing here? She asked, surprised. Fixing the Wi-Fi. I squeezed past her and scanned the place. It was a small 1-bedroom, clean enough but cluttered. A few stuffed animals were tossed on the sofa, and half-eaten snacks sat on the coffee table. The router was next to the TV stand, a black box with no lights on. I bent down and checked the outlet. The plug was loose, hanging halfway out. I pushed it in tight. The indicator lights flickered blue. Fixed, I said. She crouched next to me, looking at the router, and then at me, looking a bit dazed. That's it. Yeah. You're so smart, she said, her eyes crinkling. I didn't respond. I handed her the breakfast bag. Brought you this. She took it, her fingers brushing mine before she quickly pulled back. Thank you. You're helping me again. I was passing by, I said. I'm heading out. Wait, she stood up. You don't want to eat together? No. Oh, she looked down at the bag. I walked to the door and put on my shoes. Caleb, she called out. I looked back. She bit her lip, her voice thin. Next time, if the Wi-Fi disappears again, can I call you? I looked at her. She was looking up, her gaze clear and full of a sort of cautious hope, like a stray animal waiting to be taken in. Whatever, I said, opening the door and leaving. On my way down, I checked my phone. A message from her. Breakfast was delicious, smiley face, followed by a rabbit emoji. I locked the screen and didn't reply. Mia Summers really did start calling me often. The reasons were always bizarre. Caleb, I think my phone has a virus. It keeps showing weird things. I went over and saw it was just a push notification from shopping app. I showed her how to turn it off. Caleb, my circuit breaker tripped. It's so dark and I'm scared. I went over and flipped the switch. She was sitting on the sofa with her knees pulled to her chest, her eyes red, saying it felt like a haunted house. Caleb, I bought a cabinet online, but I can't read the manual and the screws don't seem to fit. I spent 2 hours putting the thing together according to a manual designed by someone who hated humanity. She stood by, handing me the wrong screwdriver multiple times. Every time I'd say, this is the last time. Every time she'd say, okay. And then the next time, she'd send a new plea for help with a pitiful emoji. I found I couldn't say no. Her clumsiness didn't seem faked. She was uncoordinated, slow to catch on, and her basic life skills were near zero. But she had a great attitude. She tried to learn every time, even if she forgot it immediately. Plus, she wasn't annoying. If I didn't talk, she stayed quiet. If I was working, she just watched. If I frowned, she'd immediately bring me water and ask softly, is it really hard? As time went on, her things started appearing in my apartment. A pair of pink slippers. She said they were for convenience when she visited. A rabbit pattern mug. She said she was used to using it. A few bags of snacks. She said she bought too many to finish. I didn't throw them away. I just left them there. One night, she called again, her voice sounding like she was on the verge of tears. Caleb, my keys fell into the storm drain. When I arrived, she was crouching by the building entrance, arms around her knees, head tucked down. Hearing my footsteps, she looked up. Her eyes and nose were red. They fell in there. She pointed at the gap in the sewer grate. The gap was narrow, but a key could definitely slip through. I knelt down and looked. It was pitch black down there, with standing water. Do you have a spare? I asked. She shook her head. Just that one. I stood up, found a piece of wire, and bent it into a hook. I lay flat on the ground, reaching my arm into the gap, feeling around. It smelled bad, and there were mosquitoes. She crouched beside me, holding a flashlight. The beam was unsteady, shaking back and forth. Hold it still, I said. She immediately steadied her hand. Saw the hook hit something hard. I slowly maneuvered it toward the edge of the gap and pulled it out. It was the key covered in black muck. I stood up, wiped the key on some grass nearby, and handed it to her. She didn't take it. She looked at me, and suddenly the tears started falling. It's dirty, she said. Just wipe it off, I grumbled. What are you crying for? She shook her head, crying even harder now. I'm so useless. I'm always bothering you. She didn't make a sound when she cried. The tears just flowed, her shoulders hitching. Under the yellow glow of the street lamp, she looked miserable. Somewhere in my chest, it felt like I'd been pricked by a needle. It was annoying, but it was something else too. Stop crying, I said, my voice stiff. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, only making things worse. I sighed and grabbed her wrist. Don't rub them, they'll get swollen. She stopped and looked up at me, her lashes wet and clumped together. Caleb, she whispered my name. Yeah, am I? Really annoying. I looked at her red eyes and her red nose. You're all right, I said. She blinked and another tear rolled down. I let go of her wrist and used the back of my hand, the clean one, to wipe the tear from her face. Stop crying. Go home. She sniffled and nodded. Okay. I walked her upstairs and watched her open the door. Her hand was shaking. It took several tries to line the key up with the lock. The door opened, and she stood there, looking back at me. Do you want to come in for a bit? She asked. The warm yellow light spilled out from the apartment. I stood in the dim hallway. It's late, I said. Her eyes dimmed, and she lowered her head. Oh, okay. Good night, then. Night. I turned and walked downstairs. At the ground floor, I pulled out a cigarette and lit it. After 2 drags, I looked up at her window. The light was still on. I took out my phone and sent her a text. Get a spare key made. Give it to me. A few seconds later, she replied, okay. A bit after that, she sent a photo. It was the dirty key, cleaned up and attached to a rabbit keychain. All clean. Smiley face. I looked at the smiley face and crushed my cigarette. That weekend, she followed me to the hardware store. The old man behind the counter was busy at the machine, sparks flying everywhere. She stood back, but curiosity got the better of her, and she kept peeking. Watch your eyes, I said, pushing her head back. She covered her forehead and whispered, oh. Once the key was done, she held it in her hand, turning it over and over like it was some kind of treasure. This one's for you. She handed me the new key. I took it. The metal was cold, though it still held a trace of warmth from the machine. Don't cry if you lose yours again, I said. Her face turned red. I wasn't crying, she lied. The weather was nice when we left the hardware store. She pointed at the boba shop across the street. Let me buy you a drink as a thank you. Don't worry about it. I want to. This time she was insistent, grabbing my sleeve and pulling me toward the crosswalk. Her hand was small, gripping my cuff with a light touch. I didn't pull away. We waited for the light. She stood next to me, staring at the countdown on the pedestrian signal. Caleb, she said suddenly. Yeah. Why are you so good to me? She wasn't looking at me. She was watching the street, her voice half drowned by the traffic. Am I? I asked. Yeah. She started counting on her fingers, paying for my stuff, walking me home, fixing the Wi-Fi, the cabinet, the keys, and now helping me get a spare. She turned her head and looked at me, her eyes bright. You're a good man. I just been good man zoned. You're overthinking it, I said as the light turned green. Let's go. She jogged to keep up. The boba shop was crowded. She stood on her tiptoes to read the menu, looking very serious. What do you want? She asked. Whatever. Then, the signature milk tea, full sugar with pearls. She finished ordering and turned to smile at me. Sugar makes you feel better. While waiting for the drinks, she got bored and started scrolling through her phone. She tapped a few times and held it up to me. Isn't this cat cute? It was a short video of a fat cat playing with a ball of yarn. It's okay. I want to get one someday, she said. But I'm afraid I wouldn't be a good owner. I can barely take care of myself. I didn't say anything. The tea was ready. She took them, poked the straw in, and handed the first one to me. I took a sip. It was sickly sweet. She took a sip of hers, her eyes narrowing with satisfaction. So good. We started walking back. She wasn't really looking where she was going, too focused on her tea, and almost walked into a lamppost. I reached out and pulled her toward me. She bumped into my chest, her tea sloshing a bit and spilling onto the back of her hand. Ah, she yelped. I let her go, pulled a tissue from my pocket, and handed it to her. She wiped her hand and whispered, sorry. Watch where you're going, I said. Oh, she behaved herself after that, walking beside me and taking small sips of her tea. When we reached her building, she stopped. I'm going up. Yeah. She handed me her half-finished tea. You can have a rest. I can't finish it. I looked at her. Her ears turned red again. If you don't mind. I took it. She smiled and waved. Bye, Caleb. Then she ran inside. I held the tea. There was a faint lipstick mark on the straw. I stared at it for 2 seconds before tossing it in the trash bin nearby. My phone buzzed. Mia, was the tea good? I replied, too sweet. She sent a crying face emoji. Then another message. Next time, I'll get half sugar. I didn't reply. Before we could get that half sugar tea, Mia had another disaster. She sprained her ankle. She was crying on the phone, saying she'd missed a step on the stairs and couldn't move. When I got there, she was sitting on the bottom step of the stairwell, clutching her right foot her face twisted in pain. When she saw me, her eyes filled with tears. Caleb. I knelt down and looked at her ankle. It was already swollen and red. Can you move it? I asked. She tried to move it and immediately winced. It hurts. I turned around, my back to her. Get on. She hesitated. Hurry up, I said. She slowly leaned onto my back, her arms circling my neck. She was light, barely any weight at all. I grabbed her legs and stood up. She had a faint scent, something clean, mixed with a hint of milk. Her hair brushed against my neck, itching a little. We're going to the clinic, I said. Okay. She buried her face in my shoulder, her voice muffled. I hailed a cab. She didn't speak the whole way, uncharacteristically quiet. While we were stopped at a light, the driver looked at us through the rearview mirror and chuckled. Girlfriend sprained her ankle? You seem pretty worried, kid. I didn't say anything. Mia shifted on my back and whispered, I'm not. The driver just laughed and didn't push it. At the hospital, we checked in and got x-rays. Luckily, nothing was broken, just a bad ligament strain. The doctor prescribed some meds, told her to ice it and stay off her feet. I went to pick up the prescription. While I came back, I saw her sitting on a bench in the hallway, looking down at her swollen ankle. She looked lonely. I walked over and handed her the bag. Thank you. Sorry for the trouble again. If you know it's a trouble, be more careful next time, I said. She hung her head lower. I knelt down, took out an ice pack, wrapped it in a towel, and pressed it to her ankle. She flinched. Bear with it, I said. She bit her lip and nodded. After 20 minutes of icing, I helped her out of the hospital. It was dark now, and the wind had picked up. I'll take you home. Okay. Back at her apartment complex, I paid the driver, got out, and turned my back to her. She hesitated for a moment before climbing on again. This time, she held on a little tighter. Her soft arms were circled around my neck, her breath warm against my ear. Caleb, she said. Yeah. Am I heavy? No. Oh. She paused, then said, You smell like cigarettes. Is it bothering you? No. She pressed her face against my back. It actually smells nice. I didn't say anything as I carried her upstairs. At her door, I set her down and let her lean against the wall. Keys. She pulled them from her pocket and handed them to me. I opened the door, helped her inside, and flipped the lights. Go sit on the couch. She hopped over on one foot and sat down. I took out the medicine and followed the instructions, some to swallow, some to apply. Then I went to the kitchen, wrapped some ice cubes in a towel, and continued icing her foot. She sat there, watching me move around, and suddenly spoke. Caleb, speak. You're being so good to me. Is it because... Her voice trailed off into a whisper. Because you like me? I paused for a second. Then I went back to changing the ice pack. Don't overthink it. She gave a small, oh, and went quiet. The room was silent except for the ticking of the clock. Once I was done icing, I packed everything up. Stay off it for a few days. Take the meds on time. Call if you need anything. She nodded. I walked to the door and put on my shoes. Caleb, she called again. I looked back. She was hugging her knees on the sofa, her eyes bright as they searched mine. Will you come back tomorrow? I looked at her swollen ankle and those expectant eyes. We'll see, I said. She smiled. Okay. I closed the door and went downstairs. At the first floor, I didn't light a cigarette. I just stood there for a minute, listening for any sound from upstairs. It was quiet. I took out my phone and texted her. What do you want to eat tomorrow? Almost instantly, she replied. Anything is fine, smiley face, okay? I put my phone away and walked out. The night wind was cool. I looked up at her window. The light was still on. The next morning, I went over early. I brought some oatmeal and a few light side dishes. She came to the door, standing on one foot and leaning against the frame. When she saw me, her eyes crinkled. You came. Yeah. I nudged my way in and set the food on the table. Eat. She hopped over and sat down, watching me set out the bowls. I pushed a bowl of oatmeal toward her. She took the spoon and began to eat in small, slow bites. After a few, she looked up at me. Did you eat? Yeah. Oh. She went back to her food. I sat opposite her, watching. Sunlight streamed through the window, catching her hair and giving her a soft, fuzzy glow. Her hair was messy and loose around her shoulders. She was wearing oversized loungewear. The collar was a bit wide, and when she leaned over, I caught a glimpse of her collarbone. It was strikingly white. I looked away. Caleb, she said. Yeah. Are you busy this afternoon? She asked, stirring her oatmeal. Why? I'm just. She bit her lip. I'm so bored being home alone. Watch TV. Bored of it. Play on your phone. No fun. I looked at her. She blinked, looking perfectly innocent. Just talk to me for a bit. About what? Anything, she said. Like, what did you used to do? Nothing worth talking about. I said. Oh. She looked disappointed and went back to her oatmeal. After a moment, she asked again, do you have a girlfriend? I looked up. She immediately waved her hands. Just asking. You don't have to answer if you don't want to. No, I said. Her eyes lit up for a fraction of a second before she suppressed it. Oh. During that meal, she asked a lot of questions. I answered some and ignored others. She didn't seem to mind. She just kept talking about her childhood, how her cactus died again, how the stray cat downstairs looked pregnant. Her voice was soft, and in the quiet room, it was almost hypnotic. After we finished, I cleared the table. She hopped over to help. Sit down, I said. I can do it. She picked up a bowl. I took it from her. Don't make a mess. She pouted, but behaved and went back to the sofa. I finished cleaning up, washed my hands, and came out. She was cycling through channels with a remote. She settled on a nature documentary. Lions were prowling across the savannah. She watched intently. I walked over and sat on the other end of the sofa. She shifted toward me. I didn't move. She shifted again. Our arms were almost touching. That faint scent of hers drifted over again. Caleb, she whispered. Yeah, can you? Come a little closer, she asked. I turned to look at her. Her face was a bit flush, her gaze darting away. I'm a little cold. I looked out the window at the bright, warm sun. I didn't call her out on it. I just moved closer. She immediately leaned against me, her head on my shoulder. She was so light. My body tensed for a second. She didn't move. She just stayed there, eyes on the TV. The light from the screen flickered across her face. I could feel her body heat through her thin clothes and her shallow, steady breathing. Time seemed to slow down. The lion caught its prey, pinning down a gazelle. The narrator's voice was low and calm. She spoke suddenly, her voice so quiet I almost didn't hear it. Caleb, yeah, if you keep doing this, I might get the wrong idea. I didn't say anything. She looked up at me. We were so close I could see my own reflection in her eyes. What idea? I asked. Her eyelashes fluttered, and her lips moved, but no sound came out. Then, she suddenly leaned in and kissed me on the cheek. It was a soft, warm, fleeting touch. She pulled back, her face bright red, her eyes watery as if she'd done something terrible and was waiting for my reaction. I didn't move. My heart hammered once hard against my ribs. She waited a few seconds, and when I didn't react, her eyes dimmed. She looked down, twisting the hem of her shirt. I'm sorry, she said, her voice trembling. I reached out, cupped the back of her head, and pulled her back. I kissed her. Her eyes went wide, and she froze. I deepened the kiss. She let out a small whimper, her body going soft as her hands rested on my chest, not pushing. The kiss tasted faintly of sweet oatmeal and that unique, light scent of hers. I kissed her hard, almost hungrily. She was passive at first, then slowly began to respond, awkwardly, tentatively. When we pulled apart, her lips were swollen and her eyes were misty as she looked at me dazed. Now that's a wrong idea, I said, my voice a bit hoarse. Her face turned even redder, and she buried her head in my chest. I held her and didn't let go. On the TV, the lion was enjoying its kill, quiet and visceral. She became even more attached to me after that. The texts came more frequently, from morning until night. What she ate, what she saw. Even if it was just a bird landing on her windowsill, she'd send a picture. I didn't reply much, but she didn't care. She just kept talking. By the weekend, her foot was better, and she could walk normally. She dragged me to the grocery store, saying her fridge was empty. She pushed the cart ahead of me, looking at everything. Caleb, they have a new flavor of chips. Should we get some? Caleb, the yogurt is on sale. Should we grab two? Caleb, look at these bowls. Aren't they cute? Can we get a pair? She was holding a pair of bowls with rabbits on them, looking at me expectantly. We have bowls at home, I said, but these have rabbits. She held them up, the rabbit ears pointing at me. I looked at her. Her gaze started to wander as she whispered, just one pair? Whatever, I said. She immediately beamed and put them in the cart. In the seafood section, she stood by the tanks, watching the fish swim. Caleb, do you know how to cook fish? She asked. Yeah, then let's buy one. She turned to me. I want to try your cooking. Okay. She had the guy at the counter catch one. When he started prepping it, she stood far back, covering her ears. I stood next to her, watching her act like a coward. Scared, but you still want to eat it? I asked. If you make it, I'm not scared, she said, her voice muffled through her fingers. The guy finished and handed over the bag. I took it. It was heavy and smelled like the sea. She pinched her nose, peeked at it, and immediately backed away. So much blood. What did you expect? I held the bag. Let's go get some ginger and scallions. She followed behind me, muttering, it was actually pretty cute when it was alive. We finished shopping and stood in line. We had quite a bit, 2 full bags. I carried one in each hand. She had nothing and tried to help. I'll take one, they're heavy. She reached for a bag. I stepped aside. I got it. She pouted. Outside the store, the evening breeze was pleasant. She walked beside me, her hand creeping out to hook her pinky around mine. I didn't pull away. Her fingers moved, slowly sliding into my palm until our fingers were interlaced. Her hand was small, soft, and a little cold. I squeezed it. She looked up at me, her eyes bright and full of laughter. Caleb, yeah, does this. She swung our joined hands. Mean we're together? I didn't say anything. Her eyes dimmed for a split second, but then they brightened again as she answered herself. I think it does. I didn't deny it. She smiled even wider, swinging her hands back and forth like a child. When we got to her building, I handed her one of the bags. Hold this. She took it, struggling a bit. I got out my keys and opened the door. She followed me up, huffing a bit. Caleb, you're so strong. You carry all that and don't even look tired. You need more exercise, I said. Then I'll exercise with you from now on, she said. I didn't answer. At her door, she got her keys out. This time was smooth, one try. We carried the groceries in and set them on the floor. She collapsed onto the sofa with a long sigh. I'm exhausted. I started sorting the groceries, putting things in the fridge and the cabinets. She watched me from the sofa and suddenly said, Caleb, you look just like my husband doing that. I stopped for a second. She seemed to realize what she'd said. Her face went crimson, and she grabbed a throw pillow to hide her face. I was just joking. Her voice was muffled. I put the last carton of milk in the fridge, closed the door, and walked over to the sofa. She was still hiding behind the pillow. I pulled it away. Her face was so red it looked like it might bleed. Her eyes were closed, not daring to look at me. Mia, I said. Her lashes fluttered as she opened them, just a crack. Open your eyes, I said. She slowly opened them, her gaze darting around. I looked at her for a long time. Then I said, then let's just get married. Mia was stunned. Her eyes went wide. Her mouth hung open slightly, and she looked at me like she'd been hit by lightning. It took forever for her to find her voice, and it was shaking. What did you say? Marriage, I repeated, looking at her. Don't want to. She shook her head violently, then immediately nodded, getting herself all confused. Her hands moved through the air aimlessly. No. This is too fast. Are you serious? Do I look like I'm joking? I looked down at her. Her face turned even redder, the flush reaching her neck. Her fingers mindlessly picked at the sofa cover, her voice as small as a mosquito's buzz. But what? I took a step closer. She shrank back, her spine hitting the back of the sofa with nowhere left to go. I'm so clumsy. I don't know how to do anything. I'm always a burden. If you're a burden, then learn, I interrupted. If you can't learn, I'll teach you. Her eyes suddenly welled up, and the tip of her nose turned red. Caleb, are you doing this because you pity me? No, Yensuarat instantly. Then why? I looked into her eyes, those misty, perpetually timid eyes. Because I want to. She froze. I leaned in, my hands on the sofa on either side of her, pinning her in. Mia, I'm giving you 3 seconds to think. 3, 2. I will. She practically shouted before I could hit one. She lunged forward, throwing her arms around my neck. I will. She held on tight, her body shaking slightly. I was knocked back half a step, my hands finding her waist. You're sure? I'm sure. She buried her face in the crook of my neck, her voice muffled and tearful. You're not allowed to take it back. Yeah, I patted her back. I won't. She cried for a bit, then suddenly pulled back. Her face was still streaked with tears, but her eyes were incredibly bright. So, when are we going? Tomorrow. What? She was stunned again. That fast? Is it? I wiped the tears from her face. Weren't you the one in a rush? I was not. Her face reddened, her eyes darting away. I just thought it was a bit sudden. We haven't prepared anything. Bring your ID and yourself, I said. We'll worry about the rest later. She looked at me for a long time, then suddenly smiled. Her eyes turned into crescent moons, her lips curling up to reveal a tiny snaggletooth. Okay, she said, and she leaned in and gave me a firm kiss on the lips. Seal of approval, she announced, blushing. Caleb Stone, you mind now? The courthouse. It wasn't crowded. We took a number and sat on a bench to wait. Mia sat up perfectly straight, her hands on her knees, gripping her bag strap. She was wearing a white shirt dress today, her hair neatly down her shoulders. She looked very good girl, except her hands were shaking. I reached out and took her hand. She turned to me, her eyes panicked. Caleb, I'm nervous. About what? I don't know, she admitted. My heart is just racing and my palms are sweaty. I turned her hand over. It was indeed damp. I pulled a tissue from my pocket and wiped it for her. She watched me and suddenly asked, Caleb, have you really thought this through? In the future, I might still be clumsy. I'll mess things up. Shut up, I interrupted. You talk too much. She immediately shut her mouth, her eyes blinking at me. They called her number. We got up and walked the counter. The clerk, a middle-aged woman, looked at us and then at our paperwork. This is voluntary, she asked as a matter of routine. Yes, Mia answered first, her voice ringing out. The clerk smiled and started processing the papers. When it was time for the photo, the photographer told us to get closer and smile. Mia leaned in tight against me, her body a bit stiff. I reached out and put my arm around her shoulder. She tilted her head toward the camera and gave a big, slightly goofy smile. Flash. Soon, the official documents were handed over. The clerk smiled and said, Congratulations. Take good care of her, young man. Thanks, I said. Mia took hers, clutching it tight, looking it over and over, her eyes shining. As we walked out of the courthouse, the sun was a bit blinding. Mia stood on the steps, holding her marriage certificate up toward the sun. Caleb. Yeah. We're really married? She looked back at me, still in disbelief. What else would it be? Hold this. She took it, placing the two documents side by side, looking again and again. Then she suddenly started laughing, her shoulders shaking. What's so funny? I asked. Nothing. She shook her head, clutching the papers to her chest. She looked up at me, her eyes impossibly bright. I just feel like I hit the jackpot. I raised an eyebrow. I picked